Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In Podcast. This week for UFC Las Vegas, going down at the Virgin Hotel in Las Vegas, not being called UFC Vegas 71, it looks like anymore. But headlining it is everyone's favorite bantamweight and Petr Yan as he takes on Aljo's main sparring training partner here in Merab, Dvalishvili, an exciting 5-rounder here. In the co-main event, we do gain a few pounds as we go up to the heavyweight co-main. Alexander Volkov versus Alexandr Romanov. Clash of styles. Should be a real exciting one there. And we are back up to 14 fights here with the rebooking of Krylov versus Spann and the return of Jared Gooden back to the UFC here on short notice. Prelims start at 3 p.m. Eastern. A nice early night of fights like we like. And I think we got a pretty decent showing, to be honest with you, man. Hopefully that we can find some spots to keep the heater rolling. Coming off the heels of UFC 285. The return of the GOAT, John Jones, absolutely made it look too easy, man. And Viva Mexico, break out the maracas. Alexa Grasso shipping it for us both, man, with the fourth round submission. Best night we've both had to date. Over 25 units combined profit. Almost nothing but green for you to go over.
Yeah, like we were saying beforehand, I'm sure you don't mind wearing the casual cap whenever we got this to show for it. We'll take a look over at your card first. Your best bet of the night was Marc-Andre Barriault. You had him for 2 units at minus 145. That was a good hit. He ended up just kind of outlasting Marquez, where we knew he would start to drop off and Barriault would start picking up. He definitely performed like we wanted. The only miss of the night was the Martinez underdog shot at plus 250. Honestly, it sucked that he got fouled so many different times. I thought you might have been, given that with the point deduction and everything. But that was the only miss on the night. It was the overs in the co-main event that I think were highlighted on your card. You had the over 1.5, 2.5, and 3.5. All ended up hitting, and the over 3.5 was at even money. Looking back down over the card, the Grasso by submission stab. I mean, the whole night, like you said, we were on fire. You ended up winning 12.20 units with 100% return on investment. Don't think you could really ask for more. Moving over to my card, hit the Alexa Grasso money line at plus 460. I got on it a little bit early. I wish I would have waited just a little bit longer, but love to hit that. I took another dog shot on Viviane Araujo. I didn't like that performance really at all. She looked decent early. I guess she landed the shots I expected her to, but Ribas, I don't know. What was that? Yeah, outpaced her. And, I thought Araujo had answered her cardio problems with her last fight with 5 rounds, but that just wasn't the case. And then moving down the card, me and you both, we ended up playing the Trevin Jones scorecards, no action. We thought that he had all the finishing upside in the fight. We knew that he had an incredible chin. And that one ended up being voided. It was the plus 500 Garbrandt by decision for 1 unit that ended up hitting. Best case scenario, that was 5 units to my card. And let me see. The one that I was the most upset about was probably the Ribovic scorecard no action. It was the first fight to start the card, and it looked like it was going to cash. He had him in a couple bad spots. And thankfully, I didn't have to worry about the decision, although it was a very, very good close fight. I ended up the night positive 13.98 units with an 80% return on investment. And hopefully we can, continue to keep this going, because this was, like you said, the best performance that we've ever had. So we're looking to come back strong here. In our main event, we go to the bantamweight division where we see Petr Yan taking on Merab Dvalishvili. What a run for what a lot of people consider to be the pound-for-pound greatest fighter in the UFC to end up going 1-3 in his last 4. Petr Yan has definitely had a controversial career as of late, but truthfully, I don't think he's got anyone to blame but himself. I'm in the community of people that think skill for skill, Yan could outperform just about anyone, but I liken him a lot to another guy in the UFC, Magomed Ankalaev. They're too worried about making the fight look pretty. They don't have a sense of urgency until it's too late in the fight. And it's like they think that if they can outpoint an opponent in a closely contested fight, that it's a lock for them on the scorecards. I mean, how many times do they have to get screwed by the judges to realize you can't expect, the 3 idiots that the Nevada State Athletic Commission throws out there to be able to consistently choose the right side in contested high-level fights. If they're not looking at somebody bleeding from the mouth or in top control, it's impossible for them to have a clear, all three of them agree on whose round it is. And just to put it into perspective on how difficult Jan makes it for the judges, in the last two fights that he's won by decision, he's been outstruck in both of those. In the Corey Sandhagen fight, he was outstruck 169 to 149. And in the Jimmy Rivera fight, he was outstruck 73 to 56. Both of those by unanimous decision, but he doesn't like to make it easy, even in fights that he's dominating. I think my biggest concern for Jan in this fight are the optics. Here's the thing. I just went on this whole spiel about how Jan can allow his fights to look closer, whether it's a lack of volume or a lack of urgency. And he's now standing across the octagon against somebody who's literally called the Machine, man, One thing is for sure, it's that Merab can keep the most insane pace in the UFC for 15 minutes, dude has eclipsed 10 takedowns in 3 fights since entering the UFC. He's top 10 for most takedowns in the UFC, hasn't ever fought for a title. He's averaging 6.5 takedowns per fight. And we're talking historic numbers here. His takedown numbers are what Max Holloway's striking numbers are in the UFC. He really is in a class of his own when it comes to that. Now, my biggest concern for Merab coming into this fight is this is his first 5-rounder. I'm curious to see if it affects how fast or how aggressive he comes out, knowing that he has 10 more minutes of fight time than usual. But I'm doubtful he does that, though. He comes off as the type of guy who only has one gear, and it's give it everything that you got till you can't. I think Merab is in trouble if this fight stays on the feet for an extended amount of time. I think he can only throw so many spinning attacks before Jan starts to catch on and looks to counter those. The only exception is that if it does stay on the feet, if Merab can force the fight to take place up against the cage and just grind on Petr, in my eyes, I do think that we're expecting an odd fight, to say the least. Outside of Petr finishing Merab late because of the unknowns in Merab's game plan, I think we're either getting a grind fest from Merab for 25 minutes or a difficult fight to score from a judging perspective because Jan can't help himself. For both those reasons, I'm out on the fight, but I am curious to hear your take. I know you've already placed a bet on Jan, so give it to me.
Yeah, man, I'm a little bit higher on him than yourself, but it is an absolute big fight. You talked about it, Henry Cejudo coming back, Sean O'Malley. It's tricky in terms of title eliminator, but very well one of these guys are going to find themselves fighting for a title very soon. Yeah, I'm in the group of people that think Petr Yan is hands down the best bantamweight on the roster. But I have to be realistic in myself, and when you watch those fights back and look at how they were, the odds, he doesn't cover the price tags, man, in any of those splits. Looking at where I got it at minus 165, it is a whole lot better than laying 2 and 3 to 1 on him, and I do think it is a little bit better matchup for him here. I don't think he's got the jiu-jitsu to worry about that he had with Aljo. He doesn't have the 6-foot long rangy bantamweight of Sean O'Malley in front of him, and 5 rounds is what Jan's made for. He's that slow starter, the person who gets reads early on, and is pretty much like a Terminator down the stretch once he does find those reads. And Merab, of course, called the Machine, has incredible cardio, but man, Petr Yan's, his cardio I think is on another level as well. Incredible. I am a bit more concerned about the cardio of Merab than I think some other people are. I know it's just a general concern being his first 5 rounders, but when I was watching tape this week, some fights where he was like, kind of giving some resistance. The Simone fight, yeah, he's up 2 rounds going into that fight, but it is a high pace. Ricky Simone getting back to his feet constantly. Same with Frankie Saenz. And in round 3, Merab looks a little bit tired. And coming into his first rounder, you saw Aljamain in his first rounder, first time with Petr Yan, try to push that pace for 3 rounds. And Petr Yan started to get those reads and just take over down the stretch because of the mismanagement of the gas tank. And with a 90% takedown defense from Petr Yan, a guy who just refuses to stay on bottom, man, I think he's going to make Merab work, and I think we could see him take over down the championship stretches. And on the feet, it's a night and day difference for me. You basically see a 1-2 out of Merab, and that's it, besides his spinning attacks that basically get him nowhere. You see him dropped by a washed-up inferior striker in Marlon Moraes, and Marlon's not known for having a chin or cardio, and that just let Merab come back on him. And Merab's got that wide stance. I think Petr Yan's going to tear up the lead leg. I compared a lot to that Aldo fight The Aldo fight, we see Aldo stuff in the takedowns early, having a ton of success in that fight, winning the first round. And if that fight wasn't in Salt Lake City, man, Aldo, I think, might have a little bit of a better conditioning going down the stretch because he was having success early. I don't know. Merab's style of wrestling, we talked about it. It's he can get you down, but he can't hold you down. And whether that is a weight class issue or this guy just having a pure lack of control time. Also, no submissions in the UFC. This guy has nowhere near the black belt or the size of Aljamain. I do not see him locking up a body triangle and holding Jan down for extended periods of time. So, to me, Merab doesn't have the volume, the kicks, the dominant control time that's given Petr Yan issues in the past. So, I understand if you probably missed the line on Petr Yan. I think look to play him live in this fight is a better option than chasing his money line now. But you see FanDuel offer the 4-5 decision props and things like that all the time, and that could potentially be a good look. But yeah, a little bit higher on Petr Yan to take this one this week. In our co-main event, we are at heavyweight where we see Alexander Volkov take on Alexandr Romanov. Tricky fight for me, honestly, to cap here because I 100% see a path to victory for Alexandr Romanov, but I have missed the line at this point, and I'm coming off, I think you are as well, fading him at a very, very good price against another high-level heavyweight who was able to fend off almost what could have been a 10-8 round in round 1 to come back and win rounds 2 and 3. But another fight that took place at altitude at Salt Lake City, so I'm kind of curious as to see how much of an effect that did have on Romanov's cardio over 3 rounds. But man, Volkov is absolutely a top 10 heavyweight. The dude has a phenomenal gas tank, and to see him fend off like 20-something takedown attempts I think he got taken down 10, 15 times against Curtis Blades, but was able to get up every single time. And if you're able to get up like that, I think that will tire Romanov out yet again. He's coming in here with the size and reach advantage, the experience, and a much better striker. I like how Romanov basically doesn't load up on anything. He picks his shots very well. He stabs right up, straight through your high guard, comes around them with the hooks, works the teeps to the body. He really mixes his levels with everything. And while I talked about Petr Yan being a very good live opportunity to bet, this very well could be the best live spot on the card, in my opinion, if he were to survive round 1. The opening odds a lot closer to pick'em. I kind of do understand a bet on Alexandr Romanov because it is the clearest path to victory here. And he does always stick to the wrestling, which is nice. But I can't go chase a line that I've missed on a guy who's also proven twice to gas as he's going to climb the ranks. And I think Volkov's going to struggle heavily when they do clinch up early on in this fight. Volkov is 100% going to get taken down, and it's what can he do at this age from bottom? Is he going to continue to work back at his feet, or is it going to be like the Tom Aspinall where he gives up an arm, and it's just out of basis of pure strength, not going to be able to get out of a submission. So cardio is a massive concern if you are back in Romanov, but I really can't shake that Aspinall fight as well. So as the line climbs, I guess it is dog or pass, but man, I'm going to go with Alexandr Romanov.
I see this fight a little bit differently. Here's the first thing. 2 weeks in a row where the UFC has spared us the low-level heavyweight fights that have been being put on the main card, and we're giving, amazing big boy matchups right here. Like you said, I do feel like this is a pretty binary fight coming from, breaking the fight down. You either have Romanov, who's going to be able to do enough to finish or win a decision in the first 7.5 minutes of the fight, or you think Volkov is going to be able to survive that early onslaught. And eventually we're on the gas tank and taking over for in what my opinion, the more important 7.5 minutes of the fight towards the end. I think from a betting perspective, I like the over 1.5 for multiple reasons. Yeah. First, I slightly lean Volkov here. I think he's faced similar styles in the past and performed how I think he needs to win a fight against somebody like Romanov. And I'd go to the Curtis Blades fight. I think Curtis Blades is a much bigger heavyweight wrestler that shot for 25 takedown attempts and made Volkov get back to his feet 14 different times. I mean, Volkov might have to defend 4 good takedown attempts from Romanov before he's gassed. And, if he is successful doing that, I think the over is going to hit there. Secondly, I think there's plenty of times where we see a dominant showing from Romanov where he's able to secure some top time early in the fight, conserve the energy, and, go past that 7.5 minute mark before he starts to fall off. And, I think if Romanov had the BJJ of Tom Aspinall, I would be more concerned with him finishing Volkov early. But I think Romanov will be much more control-oriented against somebody who's so big in Volkov and just keeping him on the ground. I think that Volkov has proven that he can make guys work. And if I'm Romanov, after having the cardio drop-off in his last few losses, you got to think that he's more concerned about keeping the top position and conserving that energy. I think if this fight was a 5-rounder, I'd pick Volkov easily in this spot. But in 15 minutes, I do think that Romanov has a lot more leniency when it comes to his cardio concerns. Officially, I'm going to go with Volkov. I think he'll drag this fight out enough to where we'll see that ugly side of Romanov's game. So I've got Volkov late or by decision, and the over 1.5 is really how I'm looking to play the fight. For my fight of the night, I went with Tyson Nam taking on Bruno Silva. I think this fight deserves some spotlight. It's being buried so far down on the card. It only felt right to make this my fight of the night. Both guys making waves in one of the fastest growing divisions in the UFC, and I think they're both coming off career best performances. Tyson Nam came into his last fight as a 3-1 dog against Ode Osborne, who was on a winning streak at the time, and knocked him silly with his signature counter right in the first round. Nam is the kind of fighter that produces incredible finishes, but essentially his only game plan in every fight he's had is to land that one-punch KO shot. It looks great on the highlight clip, but when it doesn't land, it can be really frustrating watching someone who either can't or doesn't want to change their style if it's not effective early in the fight. He's also, a complete anomaly all the way around. He's a 39-year-old that's competing with the best of the best in a lower weight class, and he's a KO artist in the flyweight division. Like, those are two things that shouldn't be happening, but they are. Bruno Silva, on the other hand, he's just kind of now finding his stride in the prime of his career, coming off back-to-back first-round finishes in the UFC. He's one of these guys who came into the UFC young and had to overcome some tough matchups where I think he learned a lot as a fighter. And, honestly, I think his relationship with Henry Cejudo might have saved him his job after starting the UFC 0-3. But since then, he's looked great, and I think he's actually got another fun, winnable fight in front of him against Tyson Nam. I think, obviously, the biggest threat for Silva is the power from Nam, who's going to look to land that power shot as Silva tries to close the distance on him. For Silva, I think his game plans will involve, utilizing more of his skill set than just the striking that he's shown in the last 2 fights that he's won. I consider Silva to be the much more dynamic fighter of the two, and coming out of a camp like Fight Ready, I think that they'll have a solid game plan to deal with a one-dimensional fighter like Tyson Nam. I expect the wrestling to come early and often from Silva, and just when Nam starts to think he's found that timing of Silva's entries, I expect Silva to line him up for some power shots of his own and put Nam on his ass. And I don't think a lot of people are calling that, but I do think Silva's actually going to find the KO shot in this one, and it might come late as soon as Tyson thinks that he has the read on Silva's takedown entries.
So for someone who used to hate on the flyweight division quite a bit, you've been picking from him quite a bit for your fights. But yeah, both guys kind of finding their stride right now, coming off first round knockouts. They've now been moved to the first fight of the night, which typically tries to be highlighted with some violence or something. So guys are in the good spot to start it out with a bang. You talked about it being almost 40 years old, man, in the lightest weight class there is, and then coming off an ACL tear prior to getting the win over Ode. There is some question marks always as to when will the drop off be, because there's going to come a fight where Tyson Nam walks in here and there's a significant drop off from him, because he's clearly a finished product. He's a guy who's proven over time to be hard to take down, hard to hold down. Pretty much tends to force you on the feet into a striking battle where he's always going to hold the power advantage and willing to duke it out with you, but super low volume, always looking for the home run shot, and at 125 it's something you never really want to back. Bruno's last 2, they almost seem like a thank you or a relationship, like you said, with Henry Cejudo, because you come in and you have to debut against Taha at 135 and Taha pops for fucking roids, so then you get David Dvorak and Ulanbekov, 2 top 10 flyweights, both guys who are much more promising prospects than Silva was at the time. Like you said, I think he's grown tremendously in that level of competition that he's fighting. And then you talk about him training with Henry Cejudo. How about Demetrius Johnson being on the mat with these guys every single day? How about the GOAT John Jones being there for this camp? That raises your morale and motivation for every single person on the mat. Right hands looked money lately. He's got a nasty calf kick, and Tyson's got the widest base, throwing down, trying to like sit down on his punches. It's going to be another money shot. You talked about him way more likely to be the one to mix it up. I think he's a much faster person, and for a fight in flyweights that always has a good chance of going to 15 minutes, he's the much better minute winner of the two, I would say. So you talked me into it. I got minus 180 before the line jumped up to over 2-1. Got a unit on Bruno Silva too, man. For my fight of the night, we head to the bantamweight division where we see Said Nurmagomedov taking on Jonathan Martinez. Another fight to me that is a whole lot closer than the line's indicating. You got two talented strikers here, both of them on 4-fight win streaks, and Said opened as a minus 225 favorite. I do think we saw some potentially sharp money come in on Martinez early, and I think the Nurmagomedov name honestly has a whole lot to do with why Said is now up to a minus 250 this week. You look at the last name, you think he's a grappler. Absolutely not. 9% takedown accuracy, 2 for 21 on the takedowns attempts in the UFC. 100% a striker. I will give him, he's got a nasty little front choke series that he's pulled on both Stamen and Romanov coming from behind in the last fight. But he's very dynamic on the feet, man. I think he's going to be the 100% faster of the two. And he's much more unorthodox than Jonathan Martinez. You'll see him throwing spinning back kicks and things, but I'm not necessarily sold on the gas tank of Said, man. He pulled off, like I said, the last-minute Hail Mary submission win over Romanov. I know there was a whole lot of grappling in that fight, but to go back to the Douglas Andrade fight where I laid a bunch of juice, to go to the Justin Scoggins fight in his debut, there are another two, evidence of his gas tank looking suspect. And when you look at Jonathan Martinez, and you've watched our podcast before, the guy's taking quite a bit of shit on here, a little bit unprofessional on the scale, missing weight a few times, going up to featherweight, now back down at bantamweight. But I do think, I think the guy's making steady improvements between fights, and I think he's beginning to really look better. Factory X Muay Thai, he has really good Muay Thai. He doesn't look for his home run shot. It's just a whole lot of peppering you with volume. Really good leg kicks, really good teep kicks. Finished Cub Swanson with leg kicks last time. And, while I do think you need to wrestle a whole lot to beat Said, I think Jonathan Martinez has a good enough striking that he's not going to get finished here. I think he's going to make this a very, very close decision. It's going to be a volume versus flashy strikes. I want the best number that I can get here because it's going to be a close 15-minute striking battle. So I'm going to go Martinez by decision. That's sitting at plus 380. I think that's a phenomenal bet in this fight, and I'll take Jonathan Martinez for the pick.
I don't know. For this fight, I think a lot of people want to fade Said. And when they're betting on Jonathan Martinez, the best hope that they could possibly have is for Martinez to make this close. I don't think he wins a striking battle on the feet. I think you kind of touched on Said having more of the flashier strikes. I think that's what's going to win him the fight ultimately, is he's going to have the strikes that stay in the minds of the judges, especially towards the end of the round. I think he's the bigger threat on the ground if it does somehow end up on there. And you kind of touched on it. I need a wrestler to fade Said here. With Jonathan Martinez, I really do think the most optimistic way that he wins this is by a close decision at that. And just playing his money line, I'm not really too big of a fan, but I do understand where you're coming from talking about Martinez by decision. Although I do think it's just a spot where we've seen Said not really live up to his potential in the last two fights, and we're seeing that affected with his money line, where I think normally coming into this fight, if the other two hadn't have happened, he'd probably be a 450 here. You know what I'm saying? So I'm with you. I think this is a great fight of the night, and I expect it to be closer than the odds might suggest, but I do expect Said to get the nod here. For my fighter to watch, I went with Cedriquez Dumas. And this guy's been the talk of the town for this fight card, man. And after watching one of his interviews earlier this week, I understand why. He is he is very different from the traditional martial artist you might picture making their debut in the UFC. He's got the face tattoos. He's fighting out of Pensacola, Florida. Has a funny way of talking. His Tapology page says his background's in freestyle, and I don't think they're talking about freestyle wrestling. In his interview, he says he's only been serious about trying to fight for the last 5 years, and at this point, he just feels like it's the best way he can provide for his family while doing something that he has a natural gift for. I think he's been in the spotlight this week for asking for a fee before agreeing to be on a podcast leading up to his debut. And honestly, I never thought about it, but it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I bet $100 for a debutant off the Contender Series fighting 12K contracts. $100 might actually be helpful, and nothing is guaranteed in this game, so he's trying to make the money where he can. Yeah. But on the flip side, he's essentially a nobody in the fight game at this point, and getting his name out there as much as possible is probably the best option. Truthfully, I think this little controversy surrounding the request for the money did more than than the podcast or the $100 would have ever done. So it kind of worked out for him here. Dumas, he's one of the guys who has had a ton of line movement since the opening odds. He started at -150 and has been steadily bet down to -200 or more in most places. And I'll be honest, man, I am not too impressed with his 7-fight win streak. I think a lot of the people that he's fought, they've been favorable matchups. And when 9-4, Josh Fremd is by far your toughest opponent to date, I think that's all you need to know about the level to expect out of this fight. If he does win, I expect his your unique persona to win him some fans. He's not afraid to speak his mind, and he's entertaining to say the least. So that's why I chose him as my fighter to watch, although I'd be questioning whether I'm laying that juice on him in his debut.
Yeah, as the week gets closer and that line continues to climb, might be looking at Josh Fremd, man. But SD Dumas is going to have all the attention this week, 100%. Fighter for me, I'm going to go with Victor Henry, man. You just don't know what Victor Henry is going to show up. You go debut on us as a +400 underdog and put on the performance of a lifetime against Tony Barcelos. Going out there throwing almost 400 strikes, stuffing 6 takedowns, gas tank just on another level, footwork on another level, not getting touched. And then you follow it up dropping the ball as the -400 favorite against the Sun Sal. And, whether that's the Sun Sal's ability to just make people stare at him like he always does in his fights, or if that just wasn't the same Victor Henry that showed up, I just don't know, man. He's 35 years old. He's already got 26 professional fights underneath his belt, getting a late start to the UFC run. And when I look at the line, if the Victor Henry of debut shows up, -150 could be a pretty generous number over Tony Gravely, who tends to kind of have cardio issues late in the fight. And the Victor Henry of last fight shows up, and Gravely may be able to get the wrestling going and maybe gets the boxing going. I don't know, man. You just don't know what Victor Henry's going to show up, and you got to lay a little bit of juice to play him this week. It's hard to get a read on him here, in my opinion. So that's why he's my fighter to watch this week.
For my underdog of the card, we've talked about him a little bit already. I'm taking Alexander Volkov, man. I do not have a lot of faith in Alexandr Romanov. He's one of my favorite fighters just because of the way that he fights. I love that he goes in there and just gives it his all, win or lose. But the 2 times that he's faced decent talent in Juan Espino and Marcin Tybura, he has not made a good account of himself. And you look at the wins that he's had in the UFC, Chase Sherman, Jared Vanderaa, Marcus Rogerio de Lima, and Roque Martinez. I mean, they couldn't have scraped the bottom of the barrel hard enough for him. And those are the only ones that he's winning, and they're not going past the second round. Alexander Volkov is by far the best fighter he's fought to date. And he's an underdog here. Alexander Volkov has gone 5 rounds with Curtis Blades. I mean, he's fought so much higher level of competition. Volkov isn't giving up any size. For the last fight Romanov weighed in at for Tybura, he weighed in at 239 pounds. Alexander Volkov is the type of guy to come in here a little bit heavy just to add some pounds and make Romanov work. I think Alexander Volkov, he weighs in about the 256-pound mark, something like that. I bet he comes in heavier for this fight. This is a fight where I think if he makes Romanov work just a little bit, he has the edge, he has the technique, he has the all-around MMA game. Volkov's the side here for me, man. I think it's clear as day. I'm not impressed with Romanov in the slightest.
I don't know if I get there pre-fight, but if he's made it through round 1, I'm taking a dog shot on him 100% live. Underdog for me, I do have an underdog shot on Rafael Assunção at plus 130, and a little bit on his decision prop at plus 210. Laying juice on a 37-year-old Davy Grant, big no-no for me. I was kind of shocked to honestly see this guy as the favorite. I think a lot of other people were as well, as the line has come down towards Assunção's way. The one concern really is that he's 40 years old and maybe the chin's not there. You know, he's lost 4 of the last 6 while Davies won 4 of his last 6. But when you just look at the skill gap and level of competition that these guys are fighting, you're talking about a guy for real who has wins over TJ Dillashaw, Pedro Munoz, Aljamain Sterling, Marlon Moraes, Rob Font. I mean, he's going toe-to-toe with the best bantamweights in the world. And you got a guy who's beating a Martin Day and Luis Smolka. I mean, it's complete talent gaps. And then you look at Victor Henry, how good he looked against Barcelos. Just 30-27 Victor Henry. Made Victor Henry stare into space, scared to throw it. And that's what Assunção does to you, man. He makes every single fight close. And while Davy Grant, sure, is a type to walk forward and throw hands, a lot of guys are. And Rafael stuns them and is able to just throw him off their rhythm, man. I think he's the cleaner striker. I think he's a little bit better defensively than Davy Grant is. I think he'll mix in more kicks. I think he has the ability to mix in takedowns. Davy Grant's given up plenty of takedowns, been submitted plenty of times. And the Cody Garbrandt, I mean, that's kind of an anomaly. Ricky Simone, you're talking about a guy who's like more than 10 years younger. Like, Rafael Assunção is a lot harder to hit clean than he has looked lately. The guy's 7-2 in decisions against far better competition. So I thought at plus 130 was a generous price tag to roll the dice a little bit on Assunção.
For my prop, I'm going with Assunção decision only. You kind of laid out the blueprint of how I see this fight going down. Assunção, his biggest issue as of late has been his durability. He's been finished in 3 out of his last 4 losses. And I think you nailed it as far as I think he's got Davy Grant covered in just about everywhere. And I've seen a lot of Davy Grant fights where Grant is not winning the exchanges, but he finds the mark and is end up able to finish his opponent, even in a fight he's not necessarily losing. And then I've also seen Davy Grant drop a few decisions whenever he's outworked in positions and on the feet. And I think Assunção possesses both those abilities. So you can get a Assunção decision only at minus 135, and I think it's nice that we're both on the Assunção side regardless of how we're playing it.
Yeah, very nice to hear that from you, as that's the path to victory I think he takes as well. Prop for me, I'm going to go Ryan Spann inside the distance, plus 180, plus 185. Not going to spend too much time because we broke down the fight 2 weeks ago and it's supposed to be the main event. Nikita Krylov pulls out on fight day. And originally, Nikita was the pick, man, but I'm not going to lie to you. As the fight got closer, I'm glad I didn't have any money on Nikita because it became a much more dog or pass situation for me, and even kind of more so in the rebooking. I think the catchweight benefits more of Ryan Spann, who's a more massive light heavyweight, and Nikita Krylov as well. I know he trains in Russia, so I don't know what his training's been like over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I know he was also sick at one point. Yeah. And Ryan Spann, man, real finishing upside, both power in his hands, and he's got a very nasty submission game, particularly with the guillotine. And Nikita Krylov somehow finds himself in a submission, being submitted in 6 of his 9 losses. On a fight that is lined minus 500 to not go the distance, I don't think the finishing equity, especially in a 3-round fight now, is that much more swayed toward Nikita Krylov. So at plus 185, Spann inside the distance, I think is an excellent price tag.
For my best bet of the night, I went with the Bruno Silva money line at minus 165. I got 2.5 units on it. I told P earlier, I'm not sure I needed much more than the Tapology page to cap this fight. You have a 39-year-old KO artist coming off a career best performance, upsetting Ode Osborne as a 3-1 dog. On the opposite end, you have a 32-year-old Bruno Silva also hitting stride in the prime of his career with back-to-back finishes. And he's shown in the past that he has multiple paths to victory outside of just the KO power in his hands. I think that this is a perfect buy low spot for somebody in Bruno Silva who hadn't had the best showing in his first 3 fights in the UFC. So you're still able to get a good price tag on somebody who is a legitimately good MMA fighter and has more than just one method of victory. With Tyson Nam, I told P, it's like, I'll eat the loss every single time if a 39-year-old flyweight can KO people consistently. Yeah. That's fine with me. I don't see it happening here against Bruno Silva, who I think is just a better MMA fighter in general, and only having to lay minus 165 or honestly up to minus 200. I really like the play. I think that he's got this, and if we're just in the business of picking winners, I do think that this is a winner right here.
Yeah, I got minus 180, so I'm telling you on the best bet. I got it tracked for a unit as well. My best bet for me, I'm going to go with Petr Yan. I did get in early at minus 165, and that line is since gone. But I think if you can find a way to play him, whether it's live after a round 4 or 5 decision prop, I really like Petr Yan to get back on track here, and I think the UFC is making it a little bit sweeter for him, making it Aljo's training partner. A different set of judges, and he does it to himself, we're right, but a different set of judges. Jan's possibly holding the belt, defending it against Cejudo or something in the next coming months. Training at Tiger Muay Thai as always. I bet this guy, I hope this guy is laser focused as ever to get his belt back. Be scared to be standing, being the bantamweight stared across from Petr Yan as he tries to get back on track. I just look at what causes Petr Yan trouble. I think you need to be a whole lot bigger than him and have a much more control style of wrestling to keep him down, because his takedown defense is incredible, and when he hits to the mat, he is right back up onto his feet. Merab has not submitted anybody in the UFC, and he does not have the black belt near that Aljamain does. He's not going to backpack him and lock in a body triangle. I just don't think he has the tools to beat Petr Yan. I think Jan's going to work back to the feet, box him up anytime it is on the feet, chew up the lead leg, and really put a stamp on this fight as it goes late. Petr Yan, best bet this week.
Moving on to our quick pick section of the podcast, we start off in the welterweight division where we see Carlston Harris taking on the replacement Jared Gooden. Jared Night Train Gooden. I haven't seen his name in a while. You're right. They brought him back. I'm glad that he's getting another shot. I do not think that this is where he's going to get his W. Right. I've got Carlston Harris here.
Yeah, looking at his page, he went 4-1 since the UFC cut him, with I think the only loss comes to Impa Sangane. So really not bad. Worked his way back, but Carlston was fully prepared here. I think I'm going to go with him as well. Tyson Nam, Bruno Silva in the flyweight division. Touched on this fight quite a bit. Both of us here on Bruno Silva.
Moving up a weight class to the bantamweight division, we see Tony Gravely taking on Victor Henry. I'm going to go against the grain a little bit. I like Tony Gravely here. A little bit more proven. I'll take Tony Gravely here.
It's tricky for me because, Victor fighter to watch, and you just don't know what Victor's going to show up. And I do want to think that maybe Sun Sal did what he always does best and just, caused a staring contest. So I'm going to go with Victor Henry to put up that cardio and win a decision. J.J. Aldrich versus Ariana Lipski. You're never going to catch me laying chalk on a ladies fight like this, but I really do think J.J. Aldrich is the side, man. I think she's got her covered everywhere.
Yeah, I think that she's probably the side as well, and durable enough that I think she'll be able to withstand Lipski early. So yeah, I'll go J.J. Aldrich as well. Not laying that price on her though. Moving up to the bantamweight division, Mario Bautista sitting at like minus 1,000 over Guido Canetti. Yeah, I'll take Mario Bautista here, but I don't like that price at all. And for what it's worth, like Guido early is he's actually like a decent fighter. He is old though, and I understand why he's not getting very much love here.
This is a very tricky one because you got Mario Bautista as a big favorite, so people want to play him inside the distance. They want to play an under, and 2 fights ago, this guy wasn't finishing Jay Perrin. So it's very tricky. Mario Bautista's the pick. I think he does get around 2 or 3 submission, but I won't be playing that fight. Cedriquez Dumas taking on Josh Fremd. Man, I need to dig into some more. I really just started focusing on this fight today. I'm starting to lean toward the dog and Josh Fremd. He's going to be the pick as well.
Yeah, I'm taking Josh Fremd as well. I did do some digging on this fight, and Dumas does not impress me whatsoever, and I think he's had some favorable matchups in the past. This is his first true test, and I'm willing to lay on a good price tag some money on Josh Fremd to kind of upset this guy who I think's a fraud. Moving down a weight class, Rafael Sunsao versus Davey Grant. We're both on a Sunsao here. It's not by a huge margin, but I do think that he's the better MMA fighter.
Yeah, I got a Sun Sal by decision here. Lucas Bresky versus Carl Williams, a fight that I really don't care too much about betting. I think Carl Williams has probably got the better gas tank and the better wrestling game. I think he's going to win a decision.
Yeah, I'll take Bresky here as well. I don't expect a very high-level fight out of this one, though, to be honest with you. Moving down a weight class to the light heavyweights, Victor Petrino taking on Anton Turkalj.
Turkley? I don't know how I said it.
I'm going to go with Anton here. Not like a very confident pick, but I like Anton here. I think he got screwed making his debut against Jailton Almeida, and I like him in this spot.
Yeah, Vitor has got a massive finishing upside early on the feet, and I think Anton's got massive finishing upside on the ground. Vitor's a gasser. I think we're both going to be on the under 2.5 potentially here. But I'm going to go Petrino to get the knockout early. Saeed Nurmagomedov versus Jonathan Martinez. Originally, I think I was leaning towards Saeed, but I think it's going to be a super, super close striking battle, man. And at plus 210 for a money line, plus 380 by decision, I think the value is sitting on Jonathan Martinez. So why not lean another dog here?
I am on the other side there. I'm going with Saeed Nurmagomedov. Moving up a weight class, we go to the featherweight division where we see Ricardo Ramos taking on Austin Lingo. I don't trust Ramos at that price. I favor him in this fight for sure, but I don't like his price tag at all. So Ramos for the pick.
Yeah, minus 400 is getting a little steep. Where you're talking 80% at that point. A little bit too much. But I do got Ricardo Ramos to get a submission win here. Nikita Krylov versus Ryan Spann. Glad to have this fight back, even if it is 3 rounds. I don't think we need the full 3 rounds. Ryan Spann inside the distance for the pick.
Nice. Krylov being sick and having to get it rescheduled. I hate that.
All right.
I'll still go. I think I'm still going with Krylov here, although I like, Spann inside the distance is his win condition, so I'm with you there. But I think Krylov's the better fighter, so I'll pick him. Co-main event, heavyweight division, Alexander Volkov taking on Alexandr Romanov. I've got Volkov here.
A little bit of disagreement on the card this week, make it a little bit interesting on Saturday. I'm gonna go with the other Alexander without the E at the end. I'm gonna go Romanov. I think he does enough to get the win with the takedowns or potentially a sub. Petr Yan, Merab, Dvalishvili. Best bet this week. Petr Yan's gonna get back on track. Probably by decision, but I think a championship round finish isn't off the table.
Yeah, I'm also going with Petr Yan. I do not think it's going to be quite what the odds makers have it right now, but I'm going with Petr Yan as well to get the job done.
Yeah, kind of learned our lesson laying minus 250 something on Petr Yan. I get you. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We are back up to 14 fights this week, early night of fights. Hoping to keep that heater rolling that we're on 25 plus units last week. Would love to have a similar result. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.